Oh, we can start now. Well, do you know go first?
Yeah, sure. So I've been continuing working on the operation spec tests, trying to make them fast and starting to build the different like internal core functions, especially process execution payload. Um, but I'm having some difficulties right now, so I've built different things. More specifically, for example, the function that is used to call the execution engine. And after building it and trying to correctly serialize the internal types that we are using to JSON, after managing to do that, I managed to hit the execution payload, which is pretty cool because it receives our messages and they are correctly serialized. The only problem is that unfortunately, and it's not like written in the specs. The specs are not really made to be tested like that, in the sense that they indeed contain a mocked execution client. And I think the reason why they contain a mocked execution client is because I think the execution payloads are invalid, or if are not invalid, are have just been built in a way that I don't fully understand, in the sense that they have a timestamp that is pre-Shanghai, but they still have but so we cannot test them basically. So we're forced to just believe what they are saying, and that's why I think they passed the mocked ones. Is that you cannot really test them with an execution client that exists, because basically if you send them to an execution client, the execution client will say withdrawals pre-Shanghai, which means that you're having withdrawals even though your timestamp is pre-Shanghai, where timestamp didn't exist pre-Shanghai because you weren't able to make withdrawals before the Shanghai update. Um, so we're not able to test these operations in like real world conditions. We're only able to test them internally by believing like the data that's given to us. So right now I changed. I decided to change my roadmap and to continue with doing it fully internally, without calling the execution client. Um, uh, and yeah, I'm doing that right now. I'm having some problems with the list serialization. I'm also getting some snappier compression errors, and I'm also getting some errors related to and I'm also getting some errors related to the type of configs that we're using, the minimal or the mainnet configs, which is pretty surprising because now I've been yeah, there's a lot of things that are going pretty badly, to be honest. I'm getting some errors a little bit from everywhere, and which is pretty surprising is that the tests are pretty similar, and even though they're pretty similar, I'm not getting like 26 times, let's say, the same error telling me, oh, the snappy decompression failed, which I would understand, which I had for the last few weeks, for a few, I don't know, days I've been working on it. Let's say I do something bad in my code, then all the tests will fail at the same point because they're pretty similar. And so, for example, if it fails on the snappy decompression, all the tests will fail on the snappy decompression and will tell me, oh, you actually didn't pass the right parameters on this function or something like that. Here, some fail here on the snappy decompression, some fail on the deserialization of the list, some failed because they have the wrong like specs, and it wasn't doing that like the few days ago. So I don't fully understand. I'm diving deeper into it to understand why it does this. So yeah, we'll try to dig deeper and potentially ask for help if I don't find a solution.
Yeah, that sounds like a whole bunch of problems and different ones at that. I think it could be useful if you at least shared, I don't know if a list, but at least some not necessarily code pointers, some error messages for each of the different things you have, and unless you don't yet have like a general idea on why they happen. But if you have like a general idea of, hey, I'm getting this message when I do this and this message when I do this, then it could be useful to track them in issues. More than anything, because you're just working on one single feature or maybe two, but you're getting like 3 or 4 different types of errors from what I get. So maybe it could be a good idea to not like throw all of that in your shoulders. So you can focus on one or maybe two things instead of the 5 different kind of problems that you're getting, and you can put that into issues, and we can continue this like individual discussions on each of those. Your debugging efforts are still very valuable, of course, but I'm more trying to like not have you overloaded with issues that are not 100% related to what you were doing and are probably bugging you a lot. If I'm correct.
Yeah, it's not the funniest, but I mean it's part of the job for sure. Yeah, sure. I'll try to send some more information, and I'll continue digging a little bit more, just to make sure that I try to make the most valuable issues or the most valuable sharings. I was just curious. Potentially, Thomas could answer because I think it was updated soon. Now, when I run the spec test, I'm not having 26 spec tests run like before. I'm having 52, which is double the amount. And what I'm seeing is basically that having the mainnet and the minimal running when before I only had the minimal. Do you potentially know why? Because I haven't changed anything related to the configs.
You mean when running them locally or on CI?
No, no, just I run make spec tests, and before it ran 26 tests, and now it runs 52. When I didn't modify any of the runner code, um, so I'm just curious if maybe we have an update in the repos or
Yes, when running make spec test, I modified it so it would download and run all the spec tests. But I also added a new command, a new target from in test uh, slash, I mean dash mainnet. You filter all the mainnet spec tests. If you do general, then you filter all. Uh, Sorry, I didn't really remember. I mean, it's not the config, it's the test runner you filter by.
okay.
For
Is that
example,
documented?
BLS tests.
Do we have
Uh,
instructions for those in the README? Because it could be very useful to
I think I
like
forgot to add them.
okay. Can we add a quick PR for that? I remember your feature and I remember reviewing it. I just didn't remember if it was documented. Because like if we change behavior, like adding different testing targets, we should document it so that nobody's surprised afterwards.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, so that's cool. At least it's not like potentially it's one less bug. The only thing is that it mean like we don't run make spec test anymore, right? Because it doesn't make sense anymore to run just the general command in the sense that some some tests will fail because they don't exist. For example, I think that my tests they don't exist as a mainnet test, but they only exist as minimal. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah.
that's why I also added the simplified command to filter by test runner. So if you are working on BLS, for example, there's only tests in general, I think. Then you can then you can run only the BLS tests that are like 10 instead of the whole suite, including all the SSC tests that are like 70% or 80 of all of the spec tests.
And it means that now, I mean, it's just like if you run make spec tests, like my runner is broken then, or I should modify my runner because my runner is configured to run only the minimal spec tests. So now my runner also runs the mainnet spec tests, which failed. So I'm curious how am I
You can modify the runner to filter for the whole information on the test case. There's like a test case struct. You can check the config attribute. That would be mainnet general uh, or minimal. And in the skip question mark method in the runner, you can if you can return true in the case it's in those
Hey,
cases
I,
you
I,
want.
I don't mean to interrupt, but can we have that written in Telegram or in an issue? Because like having it verbally discussed is probably very forgettable and like, hard to remember.
We should.
Especially if you have it that clear in your mind, it's probably better to have that written like maybe quickly in the Telegram so that Paul can use it, but also in the
Yeah,
README. I
yeah.
mean, the
I
instructions to
don't know in
modify
the
the.
README. I think we can add them like somewhere else. Having it there in the README, I think it will clutter it too much, but we can discuss that
No,
later.
no, yeah. I mean, not the instructions to modify what Paul was saying, but we can have either the README for the previous part, like for the targets, and then for this specific part, just a general comment in Telegram so that Paul can use it instead of like just saying that out loud,
Yeah.
because that will. It's very hard to retain that kind of information.
Great.
But
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much, guys.
Yeah.
Except this, I've been reading a little bit more about the consensus, diving deeper into the consensus specs, and just trying to continue going forward and getting more knowledge. And that's about it.
Cool. Thanks for the update, Paul. Tomas, do you wanna go next?
Yeah, I don't have much of an update. I kept working on trying to request blocks from peers, but I keep getting error messages from peers. Something about the range, step, or count on the request is invalid, it seems. I'm doing some tests and checking what could be the issue. But the functionality is mostly there. If I can fix it in like 1 2 hours, I'll just open up the APR. And we can, I think we can fix that later. Yeah, well, that's all.
All right.
I'll, yeah,
That's perfect. Yeah, that's good work. As for me, I've spent most of yesterday reading PRs. I think that there were like maybe 9 or 10 PRs that were waiting for review. So you probably already did some of that yesterday because there were some comments to address. Aside from the PRs, what else? Oh yeah, and I've been trying to. This is more today than yesterday. I've been trying to add changes to the Nix console so that we can make sure that we have a fully working installation from scratch using Nix. Uh, this is on top of the work by Zcash, which is great piece of work. As he added a flake so that already has Elixir, Rust, and Go installed. I'm just adding a couple of configurations on top of that so that we can run make deps, make IEX, have the protos compiled, have everything working, etc. And I'm just making sure that if we don't have ASDF, we can have the full application working, as there were some people that were having trouble with ASDF, like Francis. So I'm trying to make sure that everyone can run this if they only have Nix installed. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for the contribution on that, Zcash. There's also a couple of comments. Oh, the comments are just saying hi there. And yeah, I don't think we have anything else for today. Does anyone have any final comments or questions? All right, if we don't have any comments or questions, we'll close the daily for today. Thank you for joining and see you all tomorrow.